Hey, welcome to the Razzle Dazzle Show, a podcast where we talk about our favorite video games and all things pop culture with an emphasis on our favorites. I'm your host, Jared, and our guest today is Ryan Costello. Ryan is the admin of the official Voltron Facebook and Instagram pages, writing art orders and captions for 5 original posts a week dedicated to all things Voltron. He is also a freelance tabletop RPG writer, having co-designed Renegade Game Studios' Essence 20 RPG system. He is an author on the G.I. Joe, Transformers, and My Little Pony role-playing games, as well as over a dozen Essence 20 products. In his spare time, he is the director of the No Direction Podcast Network, where he has worked on several geek and gamer podcasts and blogs. Let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and be sure to follow us on Instagram at Razzle Dazzle Show, on TikTok at Razzle_Dazzle_Show, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Raz_Daz_Pod. And with all that being said,
it's Razzle Dazzle time.
Hello, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. This is the day after Halloween, so I am all smiles. I love this time of year.
Yeah, man. It's, sweater weather. That's hard to say 5 times fast. The weather is nice and cool out. It is just perfect time. Mariah Carey's thawing out, this is the time of year, man.
Give us a day, okay? Mariah Carey can come out the second.
Well, a quick Kickstarter question I have for you is, have you figured out the Cuban uncle outfit bit yet?
No, I still don't know. I looked it up and I got some Spirit Halloween type ethnically insensitive costume suggestions, and I was like, I don't want to dig any deeper. I don't want this to apply to my algorithm in the future.
Well, to quickly explain, it's just like one of those, a wider fedora that's like a nice cream color that you would wear, a button-down white shirt with some stripe patterns, I guess, could be floral, pretend cigar, maybe a lollipop, whatever, and khaki shorts and some Birkenstocks or something.
Okay, I can picture it. In fact, I have a feeling if there was a Cuban wrestling manager, that's what he would look like.
That's exactly it, man.
All right.
All right, well, let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us, where did you grow up, and how would you describe the musical background of your childhood?
All right, so I'm from Montreal. I still live here. I've lived here almost my entire life, other than 8-month stint that I took out of province to getting a teaching degree, which I do not use. My musical background has not... music has not played a major influence in my life. In fact, as we'll talk about things like Voltron, when I get into something, I can really get into it. And music is something I've only ever had a surface level interest in.
Interesting.
So it's not something that okay, technically I play an instrument. I played the spoons in my high school talent show. This was just something that, we'll call him an uncle because explaining any further gets really weird into my family history, but an uncle passed away and we were going through his stuff and he had a set of spoons, not just spoons, but they were looped around. So it was actually the instrument spoon. And I took a liking to them. And then around that time, my uncles, my actual uncles, were opening an Irish pub because I'm Irish. And they started really getting into playing Irish music and whatnot in the basement at family gatherings. And I would bust out the spoons and it would just become a thing that it's time for Ryan to play the spoons at these family gatherings when I was a teenager. It kind of faded away. Playing the spoons is actually very hard on your hands and your legs.
I bet.
Because you are just slapping yourself. And the better you get at it, the harder you are on your body parts. So other than playing the spoons in some family gatherings and a high school talent show, I don't really have any kind of musical acuity, and my musical interest, I have favorite bands and everything, but it's never been that much deeper than that.
Interesting. You're the first person on this show to say that they've played the spoons. That's wonderful. That's amazing. Well,
it's played past tense before people start calling me and being like, we have a opening in our band. We've got the jug guy, we've got the washboards guy, we just need a spoon player.
Well, what was the first band and musician that really got your attention when you were young?
You know what? It was the Beach Boys.
The Beach Boys,
and
okay.
I couldn't tell you why. And actually, no, it was probably because my brother was into the Beach Boys, my older brother. And so he would play it a lot and I would just kind of get into it. But Beach Boys is one of the first bands that I remember knowing the name of, knowing their B-sides, And when given the choice of what music I wanted to listen to, it was the Beach Boys. Like Help Me Rhonda, for whatever reason, was one of the anthems of my youth.
Do you remember the first physical media that you've owned that was yours?
So this is probably something we're going to get into, but I have 3 brothers, and so a lot of the stuff that I consider mine was really a quarter mine,
right?
Because we would often share a lot of our stuff. So I do remember owning a Bryan Adams CD, the one with Summer of '69. I don't remember the album name, and that one No, you know what? I don't think that was mine. I think I just kind of claimed it after whoever actually owned it, which of my brothers, just got tired of it, and then it became part of my collection.
Right.
A little bit later, I know when I got Blink-182 Dude Ranch, that's when I really started to feel like I was crafting my own musical identity. And so Dude Ranch is the one with My Girlfriend, and it's the one before, I forget the next album, but the next album is the one with All the Small Things. That's the one where they really took off. Dude Ranch was after, like, it wasn't cool and underground to know Blink-182 by the time Dude Ranch came out, but it was still a little ahead of the curve of everybody else. And yeah, so Blink-182, which then led to getting into Less Than Jake, because they opened for Blink-182 at a show that I went to. And that was kind of like, these are my guys. Less Than Jake has really become my main band in all of my life since then.
Interesting. Well, this next question requires a bit of context, so bear with me for a second. I'm a producer and audio engineer at WGCU, a NPR PBS public media radio station in Southwest Florida, and we have this other show that I'm a part of called 3 Song Stories, where the guest comes in and they pick 3 songs that every time they listen to these songs takes them back to a moment in time and place that they have a significant story associated with it. It could be serious, it could be funny, it could be sad, like whatever, right? As long as they remember being there, you know? Total flashback moment. I want to ask you, off the top of your head, do you have one song story that you're willing to share?
Yeah, absolutely. 99 Red Balloons. This was a song that came out when I was very young and one that I heard all my life. And then just one time in my teens, maybe even my early 20s, I just really sat and listened to the lyrics. And it is not the song I thought it was. It's like, it's about a war paranoid country. These kids go to a toy store, they buy balloons, they let them go, they get picked up on the radar, the kids get bombed, one of them dies. That's what 99 Red Balloons is about. Wow. And if you listen to the lyrics, I'm not interpreting it. It's literally like the war machine springs to life, opening one eager eyes. It talks about the jet fighters scrambling, that like everyone's a superhero, everyone's a Captain Kirk. It is not the song that I thought it was, and it blew my mind that I don't know, like, was I just not listening to this song that I knew very well my whole life? And so that really opened my eyes to there's the levels that you can get into a song on.
Well, there's a lot of songs that like have a nice, pleasant melody, but like the actual lyrics are not nice and pleasant at all. So I get that, especially for a young person, can just easily go over your head.
Yeah, well, so along similar lines to that, me and my wife one time, we were having really a lot of trouble getting our daughter to calm down. She was just like a baby and she was crying. And so I sang every song that I knew by memory, and I handed her off to my wife and I'm like, just try and sing to her. And she's like, all right. And she starts singing Pearl Jam's Daughter. And I'm like, not that one. Yes, you're singing to your daughter, but that's not an appropriate song to sing to your daughter.
And where does 99 Red Balloons fit into your life today?
You know what? As a fun anecdote of anytime people want to talk about music, I'm like, this is a song you need to listen to. Not just listen to it, read the lyrics, figure out what this song is actually about, because it is not just a poppy light song that you can dance to.
Right.
Serious.
Now let's shift gears a little bit. To my understanding, it's 1986, I'm sure. You're in your living room or wherever your TV is, and a certain show comes on called Voltron, Defender of the Universe. Can you share your first memorable experience with this show? And of course, this is setting up for the rest of the conversation.
So I will correct you. It was 1984. We are celebrating 40 years of Voltron this year.
Oh, I'm sorry. 1984, I know, is when Voltron first started, but didn't it come to the States in 86?
No. So Beast King Go Lion started in 79, I think.
Oh,
but
that's
only
what
imported.
it was.
The entire story of how Voltron came to the States is Yeah, it's wild. If anyone, maybe we'll get into it later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was first exposed to it in 1984.
Got it.
And I was 4 years old. So I have like flashing memories, but otherwise it's just one of those things that it feels like Voltron's always been part of my life. But there's a couple of significant things. One is that it is one of the only things that triggers a memory of the house I was living in then. Because in about first grade, so a couple of years later, we moved to the house that I spent the majority of my life on. I lived in for about 20 years. And so one of the only times that I really remember back to the previous house is when I think about Voltron and watching it back then. But the other thing is the Christmas of 1984, or it might have been 85, where me and, again, I've got all these brothers, so we got the full set of Lions, the full set of pilots, so the Panache Place one with the cockpits, and just going from like not having any Voltron toys to having everything, to having the full team, like that was so exciting. And we were putting the thing together, we were taking it apart. We didn't have any like Robies or anything to fight against.
Right.
It didn't matter. You're flying the Lions, you were transforming the Lions, you were combining everything. Just that play pattern was super exciting to us.
Yeah, man. Thank you for correcting me. I got the numbers mixed up, and I'm glad to be corrected by none other than you.
Which we should probably establish. Like, I'm the social media manager. I mean, I'm not like writing on Voltron or anything, but I am interacting with the fans. So I'm happy to correct people. People aren't always happy to get corrected, so I try and be diplomatic about it.
Oh man, but that's incredible, dude. My first experience with Voltron ever was when Legendary Defender came out on Netflix, and my parents were like, oh my god, there's a new Voltron show. Remember Voltron when we were kids? And they're like, oh yeah, Voltron was sick. And I'm like, I don't know what Voltron is. I mean, I like Transformers, and these are transforming robot lions. Okay, let's watch it. Cool. The first episode of Legendary Defender, an hour long, by the way. Like, what an introduction to the entire show. Just from that moment on, I was hooked ever since, you know? I was always catching up to date with like the new Voltron stuff, the new seasons. I couldn't wait to watch more and more and more. And man, I wanted the toys. I wanted the Legendary Defender Voltron Lions, and they were hard to get, man. Scalpers ruled the internet, man. And it's crazy because I first found my first Lion, I found at Target one day randomly as I was there. As I was just walking by the aisles, and I see the Black Lion. The first Voltron toy I found and got was the Black Lion, and coincidentally, the order I got my Lions, the same order the Paladins found their Lions. So it was black, blue, yellow, green, and then red. And I didn't do that on purpose either. It just so happened that I found them like online in that order, and then I got them in that order. You know, it's really cool, man. But Voltron has stuck with you ever since 1984. Did you even like remotely fathom that you were gonna be a part of this franchise in any way growing up? Like, how, I want to know the story from 1984, becoming a fan, to then now where you are the social media manager for Voltron.
So yeah, 84, you know, watching the cartoons as kids, playing with toys, interacting, because there was a lot of like rivalry built into being a Voltron fan.
Yeah.
So you would go to the playgrounds and whatnot, and it would be, oh, do you have the Matchbox one, which was technically the better and more show accurate Voltron, or do you have the Panache Place one, which has the extra play features and lets you put the pilots in?
Right.
And that was really the only way you could play as the pilots, because for whatever reason, Voltron the robot is, you know, we've gotten a lot more Voltron toys than we've gotten the actual cast of characters that we spend most of our episodes with.
True.
So yeah, so there was that rivalry. There was Lions versus vehicles, and then there was even the Gladiator Force, which was just the most obscure version of Voltron and was part of the original plans for what it would be before plans changed. But the toys came out, so you would have the Lion people and the Vehicle Force people arguing, and then someone would come in like, well, I've got the Gladiators. It's like, what are you talking about? You're just making stuff up. And it's not like someone could just pull out their phone and like prove, no, see, this is a real thing. So there were so many just rumors and things going around. Same thing like whether Sven died or whether he was sent to the hospital. It was all like partially remembered, nobody fact-checking, everyone arguing. Like that was the core of the Voltron fandom in the 80s. Like, lovingly, we were still interacting, and even if I was arguing with the Vehicle Force guy, if I invited him over to play with my Lions, he would be like, yes, please.
Yeah.
And then, and again, pre-internet, once a show was off the air, that was it. You just lost access to it. We couldn't, you couldn't find a clip anywhere. It was like it only now existed in our memories. And so for about 10 years now, every now and then you'd be like, hey, remember Voltron? It's like, yeah. And then Power Rangers would come out. It's like, that's just Voltron, right? And then in the 90s, we got Voltron: The Third Dimension, which is one of the first fully 3D animated TV shows, the first one produced in the States, because the other ones that are famous from that time, Reboot and Beast Wars, were Canadian productions. So, this was like, if you're remembering that era of 3D animation, Voltron: The Third Dimension was right in there. And boy, did that show make me mad at the time. I did not like the animation.
It's so rough.
I rejected it very quickly. And that is one of the shows that, in retrospect, it's like, man, they got the original cast back.
True.
It was a continuation of the series. It was really like, this was just more episodes of the original series. It was just animated differently. And so, like, I didn't know how good we had it. Because usually a reboot discards the cast, discards the old stories, and does whatever they want with it. So the fact that we had so much of the original Voltron back 10, 15 years after the original one, no, I dismissed it too quickly for superficial reasons. And then from there, I know Voltron Force came out. I never had Nickelodeon, so I wasn't even aware of it until I got this job. But every now and then, Voltron merch would come out, or there was a game called Monster Apocalypse, which was just like a kaiju versus robots tabletop strategy game. So a little bit like Warhammer, but on much smaller, larger scale miniatures, but smaller scale, the size of your army. And then after a couple of years, they released a Voltron expansion. And this was the first time I could own like Voltron in plastic again since my youth. And so I was really excited about that. But then when Legendary Defender came out, and I was in like a very different point in my life, but I watched it and I was like, this is the best adaptation of anything that I grew up on that I'd ever seen. It felt right, but it felt so different. The characters, like I was meeting them for the first time, but they were still familiar for who they had originally been. And so, so that was the real rekindling of my Voltron fandom, instead of just these like moments of joy at having been involved, or whatever I've experienced with Voltron. This was the first time I got to go full into it again. And then at one point I'd fallen behind a few episodes, or even like a full season. And I remember just spending one New Year's Eve with my wife, just catching up on Voltron. It was after Voltor had been introduced. So third, fourth season, one of those two seasons I had fallen behind on. And so we just spent a night with Lotor, rang in the new year with him. And then now here's the problem. I've worked on a lot of 80s brands. I work on G.I. Joe, Transformers, and My Little Pony, and even Power Rangers for Renegade Game Studios. I work on their gaming stuff. So I've worked on 80s stuff before, and I worked very hard to get those jobs. Voltron just landed in my lap.
Interesting.
I had nothing to do with it. My boss was interacting with, actually, I'll take a couple of steps back and explain the business and how it works, because I don't work for World Event Productions, which is the company that owns Voltron.
Yeah.
I work for a company that they've hired to handle their social media, which is an animation studio called Laughing Dragon Studios. And so we do a lot of stuff on social media to promote ourselves as a studio. And the Voltron people, WEP, they liked that side of it. So even though they weren't looking for an animation studio, they wanted to hire us to recreate what we were doing with our own studio. And so because I already was interacting with the fans, like part of my job there is replying to the comments on our own social media. So my boss was like, we're going to give you Voltron, you're going to continue to reply to comments, and you're going to be in charge of all the content. And I was like, what do you mean you're giving me Voltron? We don't have Voltron. And apparently whole conversations and negotiations and contracts had been signed, and I was completely unaware. And now I got to be, I got the keys to this, and it has been a blast. It's been, I think we started in February. And I've just been creating 5 pieces of original Voltron content since then, a week.
Yeah.
And I love just how much depth I get to go into, because I'm expected to make so much content that I can't always just be, playing the hits. And so I get to do deep dives. I get to do research into just different, anything that I think is interesting to me. I can usually find, 1,000 words and a cool graphic to go along with it, and then put it out there and interact with the fans that are learning about it for the first time, or sometimes they're then following up with stuff they know, which then leads to more content. And so, I have never been more versed in Voltron and the fandom than I am now that I'm working in this position. And it's just been an absolute blast.
Yeah, I bet, man. Wow, what a crazy story. So just so I can know I'm catching this right, you already, before being the social media manager for Voltron, you were already working on Laughing Dragon Studios as a writer for these other brands, for G.I. Joe, Transformers, My Little Pony, and does that overlap with the tabletop RPG stuff as well?
Laughing Dragon Studios doesn't work with Renegade or with those Hasbro brands.
Okay.
That's the tabletop RPG stuff. So
Got it. Sorry.
in my home life, I do a lot of RPG stuff, and I've been a very active member of a lot of 80s fandoms, G.I. Joe in particular. Like, I used to help run the Canadian G.I. Joe convention, and every now and then I would just write articles for geek news sites about things that are going on with G.I. Joe. And so when Renegade announced that they had the license to G.I. Joe, I wrote this resume, and it was like, this is the greatest resume that was ever written. I was like, these are all my credentials in RPGs. These are all my credentials with G.I. Joe. This is why you have to hire me for this. And they did. And it was like, this was a lifetime of not knowing that I was crafting the perfect path to get this job. Whereas Voltron was the opposite. I'm a big fan and made no effort to get this job and managed to luck out completely.
Which is incredible. And yeah, like you said, this was an opportunity for you to really deep dive further into all things Voltron. Because at this point, you kind of have to know, making 5 posts a week, that's a lot of work. I want to ask, what inspires you for ideas? Do you have a backlog of things already planned throughout the month or for the next week? What makes you decide about tapping into classic scenes of the shows, nostalgia, mix things up with fresh perspectives? Please enlighten me.
So I usually start with the month ahead.
Yeah.
And then I start picking whatever is just on my mind, usually from something I've discovered along the way in researching some other part, or I'll just get a memory of oh, that's a Voltron thing I could talk about. And so I'll start placing those, and then I'll look at a week and be like, okay, how much Legendary Defender content is there? How much Defender of the Universe, the 80s version, is there? How much merch is there? And start making sure that I've got a fair balance between them all, because we're not just a Legendary Defender account or a Defender of the Universe account, we're an all things Voltron account. And so then I'll look how long has it been since I did something about Voltron Force, which is one of the more obscure ones, but content is there are stories to be told. And the fact that it's more obscure means that there's more that I can talk about. And so then I'll start putting those in there. I'll start priming up the month, and then I will say all right, what's my what are the big pillars of Voltron that just should always be talked about on a certain cadence? When was the last time I did that? What's something that I haven't covered yet? And so start filling that in. Then a little vehicle force, a little bit of just whatever odd ideas I have. And suddenly I've got at least the next 2 weeks covered. And then I start writing up the art orders, sending them to our art team. And also, anytime that I'm unsure about something, I'll look through our past couple of months and see what has performed and what can I do along those lines. If it's just a meme that I made, that it was just a quick Voltron joke, all right, I need a new Voltron joke. If it was a deep dive, really struck a nerve with people, then what is the next step in that story that I could tell?
Gotcha. Oh my God. Yeah, a lot of planning is involved for sure. And yeah, it makes sense to look back and see how other posts are performing, to then try to make similar, more content for the viewers and scrollers to enjoy. That's incredible. But I also want to ask, are there any specific aspects of Voltron that, as a personal fan, you try to sprinkle in there just because this is something that you absolutely love and you just want to share it? It has nothing to do with anything else, but you're just this is cool. Bam.
Yeah, one of the first ones that I did was a post just saying, did it blow your mind that the Voltron pilots didn't match their lions?
Oh,
which is a very Defender of the Universe thing, because by Third Dimension, they decided to color coordinate them. And in Legendary Defender, they told that as a multi-season arc, whereas with Defender of the Universe, right from the beginning, nobody except for Pidge matched their lion, and Hunk kind of did, except he was orange.
Yeah,
if you put
the shading's a little
Hunk's
weird.
Yellow versus the lion's yellow, there was definitely not the same shade of yellow. Whereas everyone else, the red, Keith matched Lance's red lion, even though he had nothing to do with it in the original. So yeah, it was just thinking back to the 80s, and just one of my earliest thoughts of why? You just need to do a couple of shifts and now everything works and everything's nice. And the original version of that was something did you learn you have OCD watching Voltron? And I was like, all right, but that's an insensitive version of this meme. We need to clean it up. Now we need to make it a little more universal and a little more friendly to put out there and have the Voltron brand on it. And that was one of the first ones that really hit. And then I was like, okay, I get it. I'm finding my people. I know how I'm talking to those people. And now we can start building this audience and keep going with that. But another one that I did that I'm extremely proud of involved my daughter, my youngest daughter, who I started watching Voltron with, and she's really connected to Allura. And so I took a picture of her looking at an Allura poster on her wall, and then we drew in a crayon style Allura's paladin armor on top of my daughter, and the gist of it is that we see ourselves in the heroes that we watch.
Aww.
And that one went really well. And then when I previewed it to Bob, who is the president of WEP and basically owns Voltron, that one really struck a nerve with him too. And he says that he has shown that to Rawson, the director of the upcoming live action movie.
Yeah.
And he said, this is what we're going for. These are the fans that we want to reach. And
that just gave me
that
chills.
Being so personal to me, and knowing that it got that far, that just made me feel over the moon.
That just gave me chills, man. Oh, God, I love this so much. I love how a silly little show can impact so many people of so many different ages. You grew up with it. You were the target audience when it first came out, 1984. I was a target audience for Legendary Defender, and I've watched almost everything Voltron except for the Third Dimension. And I started with Legendary Defender.
The Third Dimension is the greatest Voltron audiobook you could ever listen to.
That's a great way to think about it. Okay, now I have homework. Thank you. I started with Legendary Defender, and I'm glad you brought up the color coordination bit, because I was watching season 1 and 2, and this is before they started shifting. At this point, I was already hooked on, and therefore I decided to watch the original show that's already on YouTube. On the official Voltron YouTube, all of Defender of the Universe is on there, as well as Voltron Force. So I just binged all of that in a month. I was watching it during school, during class and stuff. I was in it, and I was like, oh my God, why are these colors not matching up? But I love how Legendary Defender gave a reason to that, and eventually just still plays true to the original concept material. The reason why Allura's armor is pink in Legendary Defender is not just because she's a girl. There's an in-lore, in-universe reason to that makes it even more special, for example, and that's amazing. That's spectacular. And I want to take this time to let you know about I'm glad that you already brought up how Voltron just impacts people, especially your daughter and all this. I want to take the time and express to you how much it impacts not only me, but the identity of this show. Because I mentioned it a little bit before we started recording, but I want to take this time to actually tell you directly. As Legendary Defender was coming out, it's throughout my high school / college years. And when I got into college, Legendary Defender was already about done. Maybe 1 or 2 seasons left, but it came out while I was there. And I made this group of friends who ended up being my lifelong best friends. And one of them is a co-host of this show, which I'm sure you'll meet in the future. They were so close to me, and that I wanted to show them Voltron and experience a collective thing, a collective show that we can all enjoy. And for me, they all watched Voltron, and there's this one morning where how I was taking my bus to campus, and I would send a GIF or a GIF or whatever you call it of a scene of Lance waking up in the morning and sparkles in his face, and he's like, "Hey, good morning, everybody. What's going on?" And I forget what episode it was, but the entire ship is under attack and whatever. I would send that every single morning for weeks, and and one of my friends, Destiny, Chaz's wife, and she was like, "Man, I see a lot of Lance in you." And I found another GIF of Lance saying, "It's Razzle Dazzle time" from season 4, episode 4. And Destiny was like, "This is perfect. This describes your energy perfectly. I'm going to name this group chat Razzle Dazzle." And that is the origin story. Kind of. I'm trying to Sparks note it a lot, but that's kind of the origin story of how this show got its name. And the reason why this show even existed is when I moved from Miami to Fort Myers, I left my friends or whatever, and we still talk right through text, but it's not the same. So through the media program on campus when I was attending college there was this media program, Eagle Radio, where they gave us the opportunity to make podcasts or whatever. So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. I want to do that. And like the key focus of it is to have a group of friends where we talk about our favorite video games and all things pop culture. I needed to fill out this form of like, what's the concept of the show? Like pitching, right? What's the name of it? I couldn't think of anything else. So I thought of Razzle Dazzle. That was supposed to be a placeholder. I just looked at my group chat. I was telling them about what's going on. I just put that as a placeholder, and it stuck. And as we left Eagle Radio, as I graduated, now it's become the Razzle Dazzle Show. And still, the core aspect of this show is a group of friends talking about the things we love and sharing, all stemming from Voltron. And if you've scrolled like through our Instagram or through our episodes or whatever, you would see like we've done a Voltron specific episode where I've commissioned an artist to have each of us as paladins, like for the graphic, and a few after that it is just the Voltron colors with Razzle Dazzle in the middle. And that graphic is inspired from one of these group of friends who drew that exact graphic like on my computer bag or whatever. I'll send you a picture. I'm just rambling at this point, but point is, if it wasn't for Voltron, my entire life would be different. I wouldn't be here talking to you, for one thing. I wouldn't be having this show, I don't think, or at least not the same show. The same identity would be gone. A lot of values I hold deeply, I probably wouldn't have learned yet, or am trying to learn. So Voltron is not only a defender of the universe, but Voltron is kind of like the maker of what my life is now, if that makes sense.
Wow, that makes sense. It also bridges a gap of trying to, because, I've seen you in the comments on the Voltron post. Yeah. It's like, oh, Razzle Dazzle time. This must be an entirely Voltron dedicated podcast. And so then I did a little research into you and I'm like, oh, it's mostly video games.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's some Voltron connection and they're definitely fans because they're posting on the Voltron page. So how did it go from Razzle Dazzle time, a Voltron reference, to a show about broader pop culture and video games more specifically? So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's basically your Razzle Dazzle time. Like, that's your vibe. Yeah. That's what you bring to the show.
That's exactly it, man. And yeah, it's just having that homage to Voltron that really, makes me happy and makes me want to do this more. And like, that's why I said earlier, like doing this collaboration and, all the things that we're going to do in the future, like, means so much. I mean, we've even got Neil Ross, the original voice of Keith and Pidge, on the show. Stay tuned, audience. But like, even that's incredible. Like, it's yeah, man. That's the connection right there.
So I recently talked to Josh Keaton, to Shiro, and we're going to be releasing a series of short form interviews that we did with him. I'd love to talk to Neil Ross. I grew up with Neil Ross, and like a lot of people know, like Peter Cullen and stuff. Yeah. Like, he's a voice that you never mistake. What Neil Ross's superpower is that he has done so many more voices than you even realize. Like, there's an episode of G.I. Joe called The Traitor where Dusty is he's working with Cobra because his grandmother's in bad shape and Cobra's kind of got him blackmailed. And then Shipwreck is the character that calls him out on it, and they have this fight. And they're both Neil Ross. Yeah. And it's Neil Ross yelling at himself, and it's out of character for Shipwreck because he's usually like they say like write Shipwreck like Popeye but play him like Jack Nicholson. But here he was mad. And so it's like, but you still totally recognize him as Shipwreck. And then Dusty is usually laid back, but now he's got all these conflicting emotions, but you still recognize him as Dusty, but you do not recognize him as Neil Ross. Yeah. And that is amazing to me.
I know exactly that clip. I know exactly that scene, and it's an incredible showcase of his performance. Even the Green Goblin in Spider-Man the Animated Series, where he has to go back and forth between Green Goblin and Norman Osborn. Again, stellar performance, and he is the epitome, like the character or the voice for that character, just like Kevin Conroy is Batman, Mark Hamill is Joker, Neil Ross is the Green Goblin. And yeah, his book, Total Recall, hashtag not an ad, he gave us like a free copy to read, and I read the whole thing before I even talked to him. And he talks about his time in Voltron and Spider-Man and like all these other shows he's been in, and it is an incredible way to like really get into his mind, like not only as a voice actor but like a disc jockey and like a military person, right? You know, it's Neil Ross is yeah, we can talk more about that later behind the scenes, but yeah, man, I owe a lot to Voltron, and TLDR, talking to you, having this collaboration, this team up between us means the world. But to move on a little bit, because I know we're running out of time, as the admin of the official Voltron social media pages, Facebook and Instagram, what's been one of the most memorable fan interactions you've had during your time?
Okay, so I got I regularly get message from people that are really deep into the clans community, and they will point out that I engage with everybody, all aspects of fandom.
Yeah.
But that I've done very little with clans. And the reason is that very early on, we had posted a lance beam, and somebody made a joke about Keith falling in love with him. And not knowing the repercussions of this comment, I just said, "Can you blame him?" And that became a whole thing. And it's like, all right, I knew shipping was big in Voltron. And in fact, I'm going to give one shout out to the shippers that sometimes if I can't find details on the Voltron wiki, I will go to the shippers wiki, because they will have every interaction between every pairing you can imagine. And there's in greater detail than even the Voltron wiki. So these are the resources that I have used, and it has been extremely helpful. But yeah, so then after like realizing just what an offhand joking comment that with any other aspects of the fandom, honestly, would have been taken pretty well. This one was taken divisively. Some people were then like unloading on me for, you know, clans not having gone together, not unloading on me personally, unloading on the Voltron account. And so, yeah, like just reading over the reaction it got, it's like, all right, I need to take a step back. I need to be a lot more cautious with this. So unfortunately, it means I cannot engage with them as often because it is such a volatile topic. But somebody did reach out to me at one point, pointing out that, hey, here's all the comments you made on this, like the smart aleck comments you've made on this post, but look how you ignore every single Clancy comment. And so I was like, you know what, let's engage. Let's talk about this. Here's the situation I'm in. Because like I just went like as frank and honest as possible. It's like I would love to engage with every aspect of the community, but there are some legitimate hard feelings here. I do not want to bring up any bad feelings. I do not want anyone on either side to, I hate that, what I just said, because it sounded like I'm being super diplomatic and political, but no, like just, I know that there are people that were really engaged in the show because of this. This is why they fell in love with the show, and the fact that the show then didn't reciprocate, but sometimes like some behind the scenes interviews hinted that they might. I get why everyone that has their hurt feelings, I can understand why nobody is completely unjustified in their feelings in this situation. But I don't want to cause an explosion on the Voltron site, both for the health of the Voltron site, and I don't want to put those people through it. Of course. So anyway, we went back and forth with these comments, and like they got more sincere and more just empathetic with me as the conversation went on, because it really did start of like them throwing a lot of barbs at me, like joking, but still I couldn't just accept that it was joking and joke back. So by the end of it, like I feel like I defused that one person personally, and then a couple of weeks later, every now and then I'll just search Voltron, see what the conversation is, and they had screen grabbed that entire direct message conversation, and then just in the caption they were saying like, all right, I think the Voltron official is all right. I think we can like put down the weapons and be a little friendlier. And I'm like, thank goodness. Like I don't know what the future is here, but I am glad that some kind of peace treaty is in the early stages of forming.
Gotcha. Wow, that's crazy. I'm also aware of like the shipping community and like how prevalent it is with Voltron. And I love that. Like I love seeing people just, making their own stories with how these characters interact. Like have fun with it. I'm totally all for it. And it's just another way for the fans to just express themselves through these characters. I love that with Legendary Defender that there are characteristics to each paladin, but also how it correlates to their lines. And that's also a big change from Defender of the Universe, where it's just like, these are robots, man, and they have cool powers, and you guys are a team, and the leader needs to be in the one that leads, and so on and so forth. Got it? Okay, cool. But no, in Legendary Defender, it's more specific, and there's an extra magical, mystical element to that, and I love that. And it's easy for anybody to be like, I associate with this one, I associate with that one, therefore so on and so forth. I want to ask you, is there a lion that you connect with the most?
No, you know what? I see it as an ensemble. I would say they're all tied for my favorite character, and I am not being diplomatic.
Yeah.
Hunk may make me laugh more often, especially when it comes to Legendary Defender. And as a kid, I really liked Pidge and I really liked Laura. Those are the two action figures that I had, whereas all the other ones were my brothers. So no coincidence that my two favorite characters were also the ones that I happen to own. So that might also be the influence of it. Like, had I only had the one toy as a kid and I didn't get all the lions together, then maybe I would have started looking at the show through that character's lens and seen them as the main character. But because I got all of them all at once, Voltron to me has always been the ensemble. And it makes it fun that, like, when two characters are having a disagreement, I'm not automatically taking the side of my favorite. It really does mean, like, I can try and get to the bottom of, like, well, why are these two disagreeing right now? Who's right? Who's reasonable? Who's being unreasonable? And so yeah, like, Voltron is kind of like Ninja Turtles in that way, in that you don't need to have a favorite turtle. You can just like them all and like the camaraderie and the relationship between them, even when it gets kind of prickly between certain characters.
Understood. Very well said. Well,
so I do want to go back to something you were saying about how Legendary Defender, there's a lot more personality to the lions, whereas in the original series, it wasn't there. Something that I've learned, because now I'm on like my fourth or fifth rewatch of Defender of the Universe, is that a lot of the stuff that I remember being there in the 80s, and then on my first rewatch was like, this isn't there at all. On my the subsequent rewatches, it's like, no, it is there. Just 80s Voltron has no exposition about how any of this works. And so you really, like, the only reason we know that Sven was the Blue Lion pilot is because when he's rocketing forward, you see water behind him. And that is the only indication, because the couple of episodes where he's actually in the lion, there's nothing, there's no dialogue, there's no shot that specifically shows him or has him saying that he's in the Blue Lion. And in fact, one episode they even say he's the right arm of Voltron, which is just completely wrong. But yeah, like, a lot of this, it's funny that a lot of the stuff that I thought for a second I was making up as a kid, no, it's subtext I was picking up on. And it really took going over it a couple more times to realize that there is more evidence of this stuff there than you might realize. And that's why Lauren Montgomery, one of the showrunners for Legendary Defender, she describes her approach to it as writing the show that people remember Defender of the Universe being. And so like, that's why a lot of the stuff that's subtextual gets exposition, gets explanation, gets multiple episode arcs to explain it. And I think that's why Legendary Defender works so well for me as a reboot, because it did all feel so familiar, and yet we were finally getting these stories told.
Yeah. For example, when Hunk and Lance were stuck on that water planet, not Camino, and the Blue Lions, Lance was saying, I feel more in my element here. Like, I'm going faster, and just it feels like the lion, like, whatever, and new powers and stuff. And yeah, that's very prevalent. Also, I love the progression of how Voltron gets its upgrades in Legendary Defender compared to Defender of the Universe, where it's just like, yeah, let's just press this new button. Pew! Whatever. Yeah.
There's an episode where Voltron just busts out nunchucks.
Yeah.
And like, it's like, well, these are the weapons we need in this situation. It's like, did you have those that whole time?
That's so real. Well, I know we can keep going and going, and we will in the future when you come back on the show. But I know we got to wrap it up. So let's get into the speed round, where I'm going to ask you a bunch of silly random questions, and we're going to see how you do. You ready?
Ready.
Awesome. If you were the final boss in a video game, what would your title be?
The boss.
The boss. Nice and simple. If you were a superhero, what would your name be? And follow up, what would your powers be?
So in high school, I had basically a Mary Sue character called Abiotic, and it was basically in science class one day, they were like, biotic is the living things. Non-living things are called abiotic. And I was like, that's a great word. And so I took that and just made like comic books about it, because of course in science class I was thinking of comic books. And yeah, and he had like the power to control non-living matter. And so he would like armor up by just putting rocks all over his body, and he could like launch himself up. It was mostly rock based, thinking back on specific examples that I had, but that was that was his thing. And I've still never seen a character that quite filled that niche. So I'm proud of my high school self for being so creative.
I love that. If you could attend any fictional event, for example, the Ewok celebration in Star Wars Episode 6, what would it be and why?
That's a tough one. So maybe the marriage of Princess Leia and Han Solo. Maybe I think you got me thinking about Star Wars. But that is another thing that, as a kid, I had a false memory that one of the movies ends with them getting married. But I think it was the New Hope.
The ceremony.
The ceremony at the end of New Hope.
Yeah.
I told myself that, there was some chemistry between these two characters. They must have just gotten married. So the fact that we've never actually seen that, like maybe it's probably been covered in a novel and probably in a comic book that I haven't read. But that would still be a cool event to see, like, I'm assuming I'm me and not a Star Wars version of me.
Yeah.
So just me crashing into the Star Wars universe, it would be cool to finally witness that.
Yeah, that's a great pick. What would your 14-year-old self think of who you are today?
No, he would not believe it.
I bet.
I often will think like, hey, there's a TV show right now about Agatha Harkness. It's like, who? Oh, she's a Marvel character. She is the tiniest, most obscure Marvel character, and she has her own TV show, and it's amazing. It's like, really, they went straight to Agatha Harkness? No, there's like 25 Marvel movies that are all connected, and it's like anything you could have imagined you would ever get out of all of these properties that you love, they blew your expectations away. There's 3 Deadpool movies, and I'd be like, Deadpool? Oh, in a couple of years, you'll know Deadpool. Trust me.
Well, it is now time for you to recommend 3 people that you'll share this episode with when it comes out. You think they'll be a good guest on the show and that you can help me get them on the show.
All right. So 2 people came to mind right away. One of them is Jefferson J. Thacker. He goes by Param Online. He and I had a podcast together for about 12 years, probably. I've been running a podcast network for 17 years as of like 2 days ago before this recording. And like he's a huge nerd. He's a great speaker, and he's working in the game industry. And we don't talk as much. So if you could get him on the show, I would love to just hear him out. And then along a similar line, Ariadne McGivelry is somebody that I used to game with and just hang out with. And we would do bad movie nights together. And she has been working for Ubisoft and various other video game producers. And she's done writing on video games, including, I can't remember the name of it, but it is definitely a series you know of. All right. Well, I will send you her resume and you will be very impressed with her. Yeah. And I think she's someone that you would definitely enjoy talking to.
Cool. Well, yeah, we'll take it. Yeah, let's see what we can do to get them on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, let's see what we can do to figure out what game Ari wrote on. It's not Uncharted. It's like the 4th game in a series. It famously starts with an interaction with the villain, and then he leaves the room, and you have the chance to just sit there and wait for him to come back, or you can make an escape. And you're on like an island. And here's the problem. I have not played this game. I just know it's very popular and its reputation. And I know from stuff I've talked to Ari about. All right. It's not coming to me. And I'm frustrated with myself that one's.
That's okay. Well, I know you have to go, but thank you so much for taking the time to be here today for the initial interview process for the rest of your time on the Razzle Dazzle Show. I'm sure the fans and I can very much look forward to you coming back in the near future, and I'm excited for that too, and I just can't wait to dig into what else we can talk about with Voltron and seeing it in other mediums. That's as much of a hint that I'm going to leave, but do you have any final thoughts?
I mean, this has been great. Thank you for carrying the torch for Voltron and just going out there and keeping your love for Voltron like front and center with everything that you've been doing.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Again, this has been a pleasure, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. If you want to hear more from Ryan, be sure to follow him on his Facebook at Ryan Costello and on Blue Sky at costello.bsky.social. And of course, be sure to follow Voltron on all social media platforms on Instagram and Facebook at Voltron Official and on TikTok at Watch Voltron. Links to everything will be in the description down below. Please let us know what you think about this episode somewhere on the internet, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at Razzle Dazzle Show, on TikTok at Razzle_Dazzle_Show, and on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Raz_Daz_Pod. Be sure to leave us 5-star ratings and a nice little written review down below, and we'll catch you on the next one. Next time on The Razzle Dazzle Show. It feels like we're just trying to get the assassin stuff that's on each island over with, like the story stuff over with, so we can get back on the ship, sail, and sing sea shanties. That's honestly, what I feel like this game is.
That's what it feels like that a lot of the time. It genuinely feels like that.
Just getting through the missions so we can continue sailing. That's it. Which is, again, the best part of the game.
It's super fun. I cannot express how fun it is to get on your ship and then have them like singing, and then you see another ship and you take over it and you either press them to service or destroy it or send it to your fleet, and then back on the ship, back to singing. Oh, there's a whale there. Okay, let's do some whaling.
Tune in next week.